Can you just describe where you are in the process of developing your fiscal plan?
Well, we've got this weekend. I know we've got scheduled meetings internally through the weekend on the budget, on the fiscal plan. So we're getting closer. What we've done, we took what happened. We started in Fairbanks, June 6th, and worked our way through that. Continued to take what that product consisted of. Took that on a statewide tour. It was more of a listening tour, some presenting, but a whole lot of listening. One I particularly remember was in Kenai recently. The Joint Kenai Soldat and the Chamber of Commerce got together, and they actually had some little voting device. I'm sure there's a term for that more than that. Yeah. But anyway, so they were interactive on that, and that was pretty interesting. So we've reached out to the business community and talked to them. And we're gonna, once we have a plan pretty much finalized, we'll sit down with the legislators and let them know kind of where we're going from a standpoint. Our purpose at this point has been to gather as much input as we can. This is nothing really unique to us. I mean, Governor Murkowski faced a similar situation. He put together a similar concept. I don't think we didn't have the social media opportunities we have now.
Right.
And so now we have the interactive model on the website, all these different pieces, and whatnot. So, I think the process is really important. Some people are frustrated we've taken so long in the process, but I just think that I think Alaskans feeling like they're have the opportunity to provide their input is going to be much more comfortable or accepting of the outcome if they've had some opportunity to provide input.
Is it fair to say that sort of there are pieces of the puzzle, and at this point you sort of know where most of the pieces fit, and it's a question of internally deciding where each one goes, or is it still like you're trying to decide what the pieces are? I mean, how close are you, I guess, and is there a timeline for releasing it publicly?
I think all the pieces are still there. It's a matter of when we use the pieces. There was the sort of the 3-year concept I talk about, that we do it over a 3-year plan. What's realistic in year 1?
Yep.
In year 2 and year 3, and year 2 and year 3 will have a lot to do with what happened in year 1.
Yep.
So some
sort of, what do you ask for this year,
right,
next year,
right, exactly.
And is there some? Sorry.
So I mean, that's what some of the debate internally has been. Do we just put out a 1-year plan, what we're going to do this year, and not talk about 2 and 3? And I said, I've never built a building without a complete set of drawings. So right. I think I need to have all 3 years laid out. Year 2 and 3 will be much less definitive than year 1, but it's. I think that's the process we're going to use.
Scott, do you have an extra pen?
Yeah.
Mine ran out of ink, apparently.
Oh, we have pens.
Thanks. So the business roundtable, that was one. That's going to be one element of this story. Is sort of who these folks are and like what they're being, what they're being told, what they're being asked, what kind of feedback they're providing. I don't think that we're going to sort of overstate their importance in the process, but it seems like they're part of the process. One thing that we were wondering about, we saw the invite list, and these mostly seem to be like Sean Parnell people more than Bill Walker people, or were during the campaign. Can you talk a little bit about? I mean, is the sort of the political dynamic, is that kind of still there, or is your sense that these folks are sort of ready to put that aside and say, this is a problem that's big enough that we need to help?
We didn't really look at it from that approach, from that standpoint. These are business leaders. Yeah. These are people that Jim Jansen, President CEO of Linden Transport, Betsy Lauer, First National Bank. These are. I mean, and the list goes on. I hate to even throw out any names because there's so many of them. Alice Rogoff, obviously. These are significant players in Alaska's economy. And so what we wanted with them is we wanted to hear from them. We wanted to hear what they were looking for. And one of the things we heard from them pretty loud was, they want to make sure there's additional reductions in the budget. Yep. And it was said succinctly, and we heard that, and we have made some adjustments since then. So it really wasn't. as I explained to them, we didn't bring them together to sell them a product or to convince them of anything. We did talk about where we are financially, and they're certainly aware of that. But their businesses will be impacted, as all businesses, if we overreact. And that's what we don't want to do. We don't overreact. But on the other hand, we need to react sufficiently. And a real key, as I said today, is the making sure our bond rating remains high.
Do you see those folks, though, as having an important role in the process once a plan is released to help put some momentum behind it?
It could, if it's something they support. We didn't ask anybody to sign a pledge or, anything like that. We just said, we're going to come out with something, and we hope it's something that they find that they can support. But we didn't ask anybody to support anything because we didn't have anything to support at that point because we have not finalized that plan yet. But I think one thing that did come through is that there needs to be a plan. There absolutely has to be a plan. We can't do this by sort of patchwork, raise this, tax, cut this, do that. I mean, it has to be part of a master plan to show, and I think that people will be more accepting of the plan if they see where the plan takes us, rather than just a plan, sort of a one-off on every single one.
Okay. One thing, there was a couple people mentioned to me that at the last one there was discussion. There was a Harvard professor who was discussing converting the permanent fund to a sovereign wealth fund. Can you say what that concept is?
Yeah. I mean, actually, I'm sure that Randy and Hoffbeck and Pat Pitney can do a better job than I on that explanation. It's really what you want to do is, I mean, I am a big believer looking to see what other people are doing. To find out first of all, how we're doing, how other countries that are dependent on oil as to the percentage we are, what are they doing, and how are they changing their situation? So it was somewhat comforting to hear, what other countries, I guess, like not saying a company here what they're not doing, but some countries, I mean Saudi Arabia, a fairly similar situation. They're about 95% on oil, and their deficit is about $40 billion a month. So at a $40 billion a month deficit, they've got somewhere between 2 and 3 years before they can only do that for 2 or 3 years. So there's some similarity there. But it does not appear that they can take any significant steps to change anything other than they believe the price of oil will rise again. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But we don't have the luxury to take that risk. That's a risk that's unacceptable to us. So we're not taking their stance. We're looking at using our wealth differently from the standpoint, we know the permanent fund is going to be with us. The permanent fund dividend will always be part of that. So we're certainly not looking at taking away the permanent fund dividend. Some have suggested whether or not the earnings should be shifted rather than putting money back into the fund. Should it go during the down years? What would that look like? So that's kind of what this weekend's about. There's different schools of thought. What I really like about having I call it our administration sort of like a blended family in some respects because they come from different walks of life, different attitudes and approaches. And I've really encouraged, if you feel strong about something, get that on the table and fight for your position. Once we've reached something, then I expect everybody to support, and they do. But so I'm looking forward to having that discussion this weekend about what are we going to take away from what we learned in Fairbanks, what we learned in Kenai, what we learned from the Business Roundtable, what we learned from other sovereign wealth funds. I mean, that's time to put it all together.
Is the stuff that the Harvard professor was talking about, I mean, is that, it sounds like he had some kind of an idea or a concept. Is that anything that's sort of defined and something that's definitely going to be part of the plan at this point?
It's definitely part of the discussion.
Okay.
And whether it's not a part of the plan will be determined probably this weekend. Is the schedule.
So I have a couple more questions on the fiscal stuff. Can you talk about how both Jack Ferguson and Art Hackney fit into this picture?
Yeah, I can. Jack Ferguson was putting together the effort with the blending. I mean, the information on the various sovereign wealth funds around the country. He brought up the individual from Harvard, and he was involved in sort of putting together the conference. Not the conference, but I mean the effort on looking elsewhere to see what they do elsewhere and how we could learn from that. He's been involved in that. we know there's a messaging piece to anything you do, and really what we knew that we need to have sort of a master plan on putting the message out across the state into Alaska, not just from a media standpoint. So we felt it was appropriate to have someone of his experience too, because making a significant
Of arts experience?
Yes, this is like a campaign in some respects. I mean, it's on changing, turning the sort of the fiscal ship, so to speak. It's a very significant shift for Alaska, and we thought it would be helpful to have his expertise on the messaging side.
Okay. So. And I mean, is that? How does that differ from like what your media team does? And I guess just to be specific, like, why is he needed up beyond that?
Yeah, the media we have an incredible communications department and staff which deals with the day-to-day issues, and it also deals with the long-term as well. But we felt that this was a sort of a one-time, that this is a big deal. This is a one-time change that we felt that we didn't want to miss it as a result of not being able to have enough depth to get the word out on a statewide. But it's not just a matter of running an ad or something. It's really a matter of message. The best way to message it. So.
Okay. And with Mr. Ferguson, is he also connected with the federal delegation, and does he have a role in keeping them informed or discussing the plans with them, or?
I don't know what he's doing with the federal delegation. All I know, he's advising our administration on the financial side.
Okay.
And we have $100 billion.
Yeah.
So we're trying to kind of look at some different changes on how that $100 billion of wealth is dealt with. So as we look at various contracts. I think that needs to be kind of also factored in the standpoint, yes, we're in a financial deficit, but we want to turn the ship in such a way that the fiscal ship that it's a delicate shift. Mm-hmm. And so just cutting more and more programs, which is certainly something we're looking at doing, there's a role for that. Yep. We want to make sure that we don't damage Alaska in the process. And we had that in the mid-'80s. Lots of foreclosures, big downturn in construction, all that stuff. And so we want to we're being pretty darn careful, because we don't want to create a recession in Alaska when there doesn't need to be a recession.
Right, okay. Is there some role that the federal delegation could have in creating this plan, or do they need to sign off on some part of it? Is there some role for them here, or even in helping with this campaign, so to speak?
We always keep them apprised of what we're doing. Now, there's anything we do here that doesn't have some impact on what they do, and vice versa. So we definitely keep them apprised of what we're doing.
Do you want their support for it?
I think that's something we've not discussed, whether or not they come out and support the plan or not. It's really their call. It certainly won't be a partisan plan. It'll be an Alaskan plan, as far as we've talked about the Healthy Alaska Plan, talking about health care, and this is also part of a Healthy Alaska Plan. So.
Yeah, okay. I guess I'm just a little, with Mr. Ferguson, like he's like, his day-to-day job, like, he's typically like a federal lobbyist, mm-hmm. I think. So why did you pick him to do this job of sort of research and coordination of the ideas and concepts about managing the state's money?
Those are questions you probably need to ask those that worked with him more closely. I saw him occasionally, mm-hmm. But not on a day-to-day basis. So, okay. As far as what his day-to-day activities were, I didn't know. Okay.
Okay. So I think that's all I have on the fiscal situation. I mean, is there anything else you think that the public should know, or that I should know, about sort of the process that you're working through, the way that? Oh, well, here's one other thing. Sort of why I think people will will learn about the meetings you've had with the business roundtable and say, sort of, why does this group get to hear about these ideas and concepts first before us? Like, can you sort of articulate why that why that's the case? I mean, it seems like there's probably a good reason for that.
Yeah, we just use them as a sounding board
Yeah.
from the business community. We felt that there's the business community. There were people there from the president of BP Alaska, ConocoPhillips there. I mean, the oil industry representatives were there. Tourism representatives were there from the tourism industry. Alaska Native Corporation CEOs were there. Labor, somebody that was there that has a labor background. So, it's a broad spectrum of sort of across our industry. Mining, we had the executive director of the mining, Alaska Mining Association. So, it was really to hear what they're hearing, what they're thinking, what they're how their industries are going, what would impact them, what wouldn't, and so it was really more about information gathering, again, much more so than trying to sell them on something.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So on the DC journey, can you tell us sort of what you were specifically, I guess, what you were seeking from the administration there?
A couple of things. One is, I set the meetings up. I began the process within hours of learning of Shell's announcement Sunday night. I sent out an email to my scheduler and said, get me set up with meetings with Secretary Jewell and with the White House. When I traveled with the president, I talked to him about the 1002 area of ANWR.
Yeah.
It's 8%. It was set aside by Congress specifically to be considered for additional development because I knew it had significant hydrocarbon opportunities there.
Yeah.
And so I talked to him about that, and he said, Governor, that's something that you're going to, that's going to be a bit of a challenge, and but you're going to need to spend time with Secretary Jewell and Brian Deese at the White House.
Yeah.
Well, Brian Deese was on the flight with me, so I had a chance to chat with him then. So that was really the main purpose of the trip, was to sit down with both of those. We were also able to sit down with Secretary Anthony Fox, Secretary of Transportation,
Yeah.
And that's with two X's,
Yes.
by the way, and also with Secretary Burwell of Health and Human Services as well, talking about Medicaid expansion. But on the White House visit, it was more of explain the impact of Shell has on us.
Yep.
There's a lot of hope in Alaska on the as a result of Shell, recognizing we would not get $1 of revenue from that oil,
Yeah.
which is something Senator Murkowski has been working hard to change through some legislation she's been pretty successful with. But the fact that just it'd be more oil in the pipe, the pipeline would come across NPRA. As a result of the pipeline coming across there, smaller fields could tie into that, and so it would just open up NPRA a bit. They wanted to talk a bit about NPRA, and I explained. Some have described NPRA as a large gas field with some oil,
Yep.
and so really until there's a gas line, there's probably not going to be a lot of exploration in NPRA. And there's smaller pockets of oil over there, whereas in 1002, the range is between 6 and 16 billion barrels.
Yep.
So the sort of sweet spot is about 10 billion barrels.
Yep.
That's a pretty significant onshore.
Yep.
And so what I wanted to point out is that we certainly supported the president's justification for offshore drilling in Alaska,
Yep.
as far as it can be done safely, that if someone's going to use that oil, it might as well be U.S. oil.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, Shell was not going to be drilling another well in the foreseeable future, in the near future anyway. Let's move that same philosophy onto the 1002 section, which is right next to Point Thompson, and so that was really the push to let them know. Before I've discussed the 1002, now I'm very focused on 1002.
So it was sort of like a question of, if we're not going to get this offshore development, then, in exchange, you should consider opening up the 1002.
And I'm only talking about half of the 1002.
Okay.
So now we're down to 4% of ANWR.
Okay.
I mean, my goodness.
So I mean, is that pretty much your request? Is like, open this, please?
Well, no, there's a process you have to go through. One is you have to do an analysis of it, and
Yeah.
there has not been an analysis on the porcupine caribou herd. Where does that,
Okay.
is there calving ground still in the 1002? What part of the 1002?
Yeah.
What are, there's a lot of things that have changed because of the whole weather system has changed up there. So we need the first step would be to have an analysis done by science and not necessarily by politics. That's the first step. The second is it would require an act of Congress, but if it's a dead-on arrival with the administration, I wanted to find that out now before going down that path with Congress, but not so.
What was the answer?
Well, I think that the answer of the discussion is that from the White House, they certainly understood the need. I mean, we weren't going there for definitive asks. We're going there to sort of state our case and say, here's what we're going to do. Yeah. And it was more of a move this to the front of the queue, if you will. Yeah. Before, we've talked a lot about gas line with them, and they've been very positive, and they bring it up every single time. Yesterday, all the meetings, at the White House and at the Department of Interior, they brought up the gas line, which I'm always happy to talk about that. Yeah. And they just have many times said how anxious they are to help expedite that, and I appreciate that. But this isn't just about the gas line. This is also about more oil in the taps because of the low throughput.
And did they give an indication that it could be something other than dead on arrival, like the idea? Because I guess just from what we've heard from the president, he came up here to talk about. We've kind of had this discussion before, I think, but the president came up here to talk about climate change. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy. He's already asked Congress to set this aside as a wilderness area. His administration has declared it a wilderness area. So, it seems like the dead on arrival is probably like the most likely response.
But I think the significant change is it was anticipation of the big fine from Shell. Yeah. And so here they argue over the Keystone Pipeline is now elevated to the presidential debates, et cetera. Yeah. And what I'm saying is that rather than argue over the Keystone Pipeline, here we have a pipeline that's 3/4 empty, a very short distance, a matter of less than 20 miles to be able to tie in with a pipeline system out of Point Thompson. So, and then we're using U.S. oil, Alaskan oil, and of that oil out of 1002, 90% to Alaska and 10% to the federal government. So, is it an environmental issue or is it an economic issue?
Yeah. So, and what was the response?
They did a lot of listening about it, and I knew that it wasn't. I didn't expect it to be embraced, and I don't expect it necessarily to be embraced initially. Yeah. We'll continue to push on that pretty aggressively because we have to. Yeah. Where we are right now, we absolutely have to. So that's part of the Get Well program as well. Is I don't know if we're ever going to be able to fill up taps, but we certainly can reduce the decline of throughput.
Was there any response from them?
I'd say it was a discussion. I think it's too soon to be giving quotes and those kinds of things, but it was. They scheduled the meetings right away. Yeah. And to be able to call up and within a week get into a meeting at the White House and with the Secretary of Interior, I was pleased with that. So,
and I guess one other question is why it seems like. Phrase this question a little bit better. Why you, as opposed to the delegation, delivering this message?
Well, I think because I deal with the budget. Yeah. I deal with the shortfall. I deal with the challenges the legislature are faced on the financial side. So, they deal with certainly I met with Senator Murkowski first thing yesterday morning, and before I had a meeting at the White House, and also went over to meet with Senator Sullivan. This came up so quickly we didn't end up having to schedule a meeting with Senator Sullivan, but we do interact with the and Byron Malott, Lieutenant Governor Malott is meeting with Congressman Young today to sort of brief him on this as well. So, they obviously were aligned on this. They've been working hard on this issue for a long time.
Okay. So, and is there? You've spent now. You took the trip and came back on Air Force One. I don't recall if there was another meeting that you had in Alaska with the president.
There was.
Then, you've also had this trip. What can you point to and say, here are some of the things that we've gotten from the White House for those efforts?
I don't think you sit down in a half-hour meeting or a 2-hour meeting and actually come out with a deliverable. I think you do start. I think what you do is you open up a discussion, open up a dialogue, and I think that's important. So we certainly have received those. What have we seen? Is there any way that the troop hold is related? I don't think anybody knows that. Yeah. Is there any? Obviously the change of the name of the mountain was certainly appreciated in that regard. Yeah. I truly think the president connect with Alaskans that he met. I think he really felt a connection to Alaska in some way, different. How that's going to play out, I just don't know. I know that they continue to bring up on this trip more so than others how they can help on the gas line.
Yeah.
So I think they recognize the rural. I mean, I'm glad they went to Kotzebue and to Dillingham and into Seward and sort of saw something other than just downtown, Fifth Avenue.
What and that's just last thing. I mean, like when should the public when would it be a fair expectation for the public to expect a tangible payoff, I guess?
I don't know that a tangible payoff is the way I would look at it. I would look at it as our if they would. What I'm hopeful of is that, say on the 1002, if they would not come out and oppose it in some way, or not come out and say, I will veto this, or I'll do that. I mean, that would be be able to get them to have a discussion before they make those decisions is really critical. So I think that's a tangible to me is again to be able to have and they've been pretty open saying whenever you need to have additional meetings, let me know. And I don't know if it's because I'm a nonpartisan, although sometimes the president brings that up a bit. It gives me the opportunity to I don't wear a particular jersey, other than just the Alaskan one. So I think that gives me a different kind of access because they don't have to look at any sort of political motivation.
Yeah. Was the meeting in the White House?
The meeting was was in the West Wing, I think.
So the Eisenhower Executive Building.
Oh, that's the big Gothic looking one.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
It used to be the War Department.
Okay.
Yeah. My last meeting was with Brian Deese was in the West Wing. This was in the Eisenhower. That's right.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
for
Yeah.
all the
Thank you.
time.
Thanks very much.
And for the view.
Yeah.
Are you going somewhere? Can we camp out? I could read all the stuff on your desk. I'm sure it would be.
We could give you a tour.
Yeah, and
So Lieutenant Governor's office has really nice view.
Yeah, he actually has a better view than this one.